Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to ASDC's Thursday Train to Win webinar. Today's topic is opposition research, and we know that a lot of you out there in the States are working on campaigns and developing your messaging as it relates to the specific candidates that are on the ballot of this election cycle. So today we thought we'd give you an opportunity to hear from research experts on best practices for researching and framing your opposition. So we have a fantastic web training plan for you today. But before we dive in, just wanted to remind you a few housekeeping items. The first is that you are in listen-only mode as an attendee to today's webinar, but if you have questions, you can type them in the questions box, or you can click the raise my hand icon if you can't type them in the questions box, and we'll make sure to get your questions read and answered for you by our presenters for today. Secondly, we hope that you will track with us on social media. There are Twitter handles as well as our hashtag for our webinar series, and we hope that you'll track with us and tell us about the great things that you're learning on today's webinar. Really quickly, wanted to review the agenda for you just so you know what to expect in today's training. After we wrap up our few friendly reminders, we will hear from the research team here at the DNC, as well as Lily Adams, who is the communications director here at the DNC, there are your presenters listed there on our agenda on your screen. Then we will talk a bit about next steps and close with talking about our evaluation process for today's webinar. So again, just as a quick reminder, you're in listen-only mode, but you can type your questions into the questions box. And Lauren Smith and Lauren Dillon and Lily, our presenters for today, will make sure that we get your questions read and answered. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to Lauren Smith and Lauren Dillon to talk with us about opposition research.
Thanks, guys, for joining us this afternoon. I'm Lauren Dillon. I'm the research director here at the DNC, and I just want to give you a brief overview of what it is exactly we do here at the DNC. We focus mainly on opposition research, looking at Republicans' records. I'm sure that a lot of your campaigns will also include people who do self-research on your candidates that are running, but our focus is mainly on opposition. Our department is broken into two sections, one of which is our video team, and the other is our text team. Our video team you may have worked with in the past, and if not, you should definitely get in contact with us. We have the largest archive that exists on Republican comments and things that they've said from different races. Our archive goes back a dozen years, and we may or may not have stuff on people in your state, and we would love to work with you to get more stuff in there. But our video team, they do a lot of clipping. We are regularly recording multiple cable channels. If you have a candidate that was on the news, say, Tom Tillis decides to go on the news after his win in North Carolina, we are able to clip those videos and have a rush transcript, and those are things that we could easily send to you. Our video team also helps us with tracking. We coordinate a lot of trackers. Mostly we track 2016 candidates, people who may want to run for president on the Republican side. So if they're coming to your state, there's a good chance that we probably contact you to help us track those events. We are always hoping to build our database of video that we have on these guys that we can later use for web ads or websites and things like that. Then we have our text team. Our text team has a rapid response section. They focus on whatever's happening day to day. If the Koch brothers are hitting someone in your state, then we try and make sure that we have an up-to-date doc on information about the Koch brothers that we can send to people like you to use to attack them back. We monitor Republican leadership. Now we have one less person to monitor with Eric Cantor leaving, but I'm sure that they'll fill that space pretty soon, and we'll have someone else. But they pretty much cover everything that doesn't have to do with 2016, and they also help us if a 2016er is coming to your state and maybe they're campaigning with a Susana Martinez. They can help us fill some of the gaps in information that we have that we can then send to you, and hopefully you can use it for a press release or something along those lines. And then we have a section that is mostly focused on 2016. One of the main goals of the opposition research team here at the DNC is to be prepared for the presidential election cycle. So our job is to build research books on anyone we think may be running. We have a long list of candidates that we're building books on right now, and if any of them are ever coming to your state and you want to tie them to one of the Republicans in your state, we are happy to help get you some information about their record so that we can make those hits happen. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Smith, who's going to talk to you a little bit about how research can really benefit your shop and resources that are available to you.
Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Smith. I'm the Deputy Research Director here, and I handle the rapid response operation under Lauren Dillon's direction. Thanks for joining us on the call today. So Lauren did a great job of introducing what we do here at the DNC, and we really just want to emphasize that we can be a great resource for you guys, and many of you we've already worked with before, and we really enjoy that partnership. So continue to work with us on many of the things that you're doing. That's great. So I kind of want to start out by talking about some of the ways that we've benefited from your research and your great work out in the states there. So hopefully most if not all of you are familiar with our GOP autopsy project. I think many of you, if not most of you, submitted great material for us, which we've put on our website, sameoldparty.com, which I hope you will take a look at. And our goal with that project was to hold Republicans accountable for their insensitive statements and to kind of hold them accountable and prove that they haven't changed. They haven't become more inclusive or done more outreach to women, to the LGBT community, to communities of color and the middle class. So we continue to update this website, so please, continue to send stuff our way. We've had, really great material with that we've been working for. And this is just kind of a great example of, what research can do, at all levels and at all races. And the project itself really lends itself to talking about kind of the unique role of state parties. And we're very grateful for the work that you guys do, being involved at the grassroots level, knowing what's going on in the communities and being keyed into these local and state issues in a way that we simply can't be, here at the DNC is just great. So obviously you folks and your teams, you're more responsible for driving the day-to-day narratives about these candidates, at the state level. And for some of the more local races, you've really got the loudest voice and a unique voice at that. And, we don't have the capacity to follow kind of every kind of crazy or wacky thing that's going through our state legislature right now, or everything offensive that was said by, every elected official or candidate, from a mayoral race to a state legislator, a state senator, et cetera. And, it really just takes one misstatement to brand someone and, really tarnish their reputation, and then they have to run on that. So, which our Same Old Party website shows, these kinds of casual statements and statements from local elected officials that can be overlooked, if we're not paying attention, are so important to highlight. So that's, with that, I really just want to emphasize that, we would highly recommend, we want to suggest that you guys make sure that you hire your own researchers in-house, and they can help you with a lot of this work at the state level that's so important. So, with that, I just want to say, in terms of the important role of researchers at a state party level, I think there's a couple of ways that we can look at that role. One item is that researchers are generating content for you guys and for the party and for all these elections in what is really a content-driven arena, right? So it's just invaluable to have a researcher on staff who is
looking into what folks are saying at all levels, looking into the legislation that's being debated and is often very extreme at the state level. And this content can be used in just a variety of ways. It can be used to generate news stories and press releases, but also in web videos, and it's also the content for paid advertisement. And another aspect that can't be overlooked is that it can be used to raise money, right? It can be used to used in fundraising emails and fundraising pitches. So really, getting that content is just so important. That research really does matter, and it just has a ripple effect in so many ways. And then I'll also say that we sort of view research as the institutional memory of a campaign. So it really is a very important role. And as Lauren mentioned earlier, at our level, we're archiving the present every day. So in our shop, we're writing what we call bullets, which are bullet points of kind of important information from everyday news stories. So we're keeping track of the news of the day, and we're also keeping track of a record of everything that these candidates that we're focused on, what they say every day. So I would advise you, to do the same. Politics changes and positions change so frequently. Something that a candidate says in June may contradict what they say in October. So having, someone in your shop just keeping a record, keeping a record that they can share, and paying attention to this hypocrisy is so important to these races. It'll really help you, hold these folks' feet to the fire, so to speak. And similarly, it's also essential for doing a deep dive into individual folks' records, right? So, having a staffer there to look into a voting record, a history of statements, news articles, etc. This is really an essential part as well. In addition to that, I would just say that research is really helpful in developing like a theme and a narrative on a candidate. So working with comms, using the information that they're writing about every day, developing a thematic and just sort of how we want to portray these candidates. Do their statements or their voting records indicate that we want to call them hypocrites or flip-floppers? Do they have a record of treating constituents badly? Just having a researcher there to look at their past record and current statements, coupled with a comm staffer is really essential to developing a narrative. And also, along with that, I just want to talk about research that you're going to inherit. And so it's not uncommon for state parties and campaigns, et cetera, to inherit old research, and that's really important. But I would argue that, again, having a researcher in-house to kind of go through this material and look through this old research, again, things change so rapidly. Being able to have a researcher there to kind of look at the narrative and look at what's going on day to day, as well as understanding that past work is very important. And then, similarly, with any books that you might have delivered to you by an outside consultant for a current race, once they give you the final product, it's just so important to pay attention to the news of the day and hold their feet to the fire and make sure that, the way a consultant might have presented you with information and developed thematics, make sure that that's still current and up to date. And so, again, just making a case for why that's important to do in-house. So beyond that, I just want to talk about a couple of resources that we think could be valuable to you. Lauren Dillon mentioned earlier that we have a very large video team here, and she also mentioned that tracking is very important in our work. And I would just encourage you, if we haven't already, we will be in touch with you guys when any of the potential 2016ers visit your state. And we really look forward to partnering with you guys on those types of things and making sure that we get, footage from their appearances. And we would also just kind of encourage you to, track as you're able candidates at the local levels, candidates, who are doing presentations throughout the state. And what I would say is it's really valuable to get just sort of a network of volunteers who can help you throughout the state. Folks travel all over a given state, right? So just having as many people on call to keep track of these events is very helpful. So That would be my advice on that. Another video product I wanted to mention is called TV Eyes. This is a web-based service that you can buy at a pretty reasonable cost. We recommend using that if folks don't have it already. It allows you to track a given candidate or a series of candidates. So I don't think there's any limit to the number of folks you can track, but whenever they appear on TV, on the news, local news, cable news, etc., it's a web-based program. It'll highlight those programs for you. It'll give you video which you can download. So we're happy to talk to you about that. If you're interested, going through us would allow you to get a better deal on that. I also want to talk about LexisNexis. If you guys don't have that already, again, I would advise you to get it. It's really just it's an invaluable tool for getting news stories, transcripts of TV appearances. It also has access to the congressional record and a public records feature. So again, please work with us to set this up. We can get that to you at a very discounted and reasonable rate, and we would just highly advise it. It's such an invaluable tool. And then lastly, I just want to mention kind of the importance of public records requests. And our public records requests can really drive a story and drive a narrative. So if you look at Chris Christie's Bridgegate, for example, while those weren't democratic or political FOIAs, but discovering the public records has been such an important part of that story. And folks in the state and on the ground there really do have an advantage in submitting some of these FOIAs. So in certain states, you actually need to be a resident of the state in order to submit a FOIA. Also, being on the ground, it allows you to do collection trips a lot easier than we can in the states, or I'm sorry, we can at the DNC. So I'll just give you a quick example of some of the things you might be able to FOIA on someone, submit a public request for. Police records, court records. If they're public officials, sometimes you can, request their written correspondence or their email logs. Property taxes, school tax payments, items like that. And you can really find some great things if you do those kind of requests. So I just wanted that to be kind of a quick introduction to public records, and I will say that if you're interested in FOIAing something, we're always helpful. We're always glad to work with you on that. We've worked with a couple of state parties, with those types of projects in the past, and sometimes, frankly, it is just helpful to check in, right? So if you had an interest in FOIAing something on a congressional candidate, maybe the DCCC has already done it, or maybe it's sensitive in nature or something, and they might have some advice. So, I just wanted to kind of flag that it's this really cool thing you can do and should be fully utilized. But again, working with us here in DC is also maybe the best way to go forward on that. So with that, we're really happy to talk with you about any of those kind of specific resources that I mentioned or strategies. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Lily Adams in our communications department.
Hey guys, so I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how you take sort of opposition research that you and your teams find, and just a couple of best practices in getting it into the news in a way that's effective and helpful to your candidate or your party. We traffic in a lot of opposition research here, so over the over the years and whatnot, and having worked on campaigns before, these are just sort of 5 things to think about, as you are sitting on something that you think is really good. The first thing is just to make sure that you've considered what your vulnerabilities are on a piece of research. So let's say you find out that a candidate that you're running against hasn't paid his taxes, for 3 years, or was late paying his taxes for 3 years. Well, that would be a good time to check if your own candidate has paid their taxes on time every year. And even if it's not your candidate, making sure that your state party chairman or whoever else, people that are very intimately connected to your campaign, are not haven't done things that are similar from what you're about to accuse your opponent of doing. I think that the worst thing that can happen to a piece of opposition research is to have it inoculated very quickly by some sort of hypocrisy argument. So that's just one thing to consider. The second thing is sourcing. So there are a variety of ways to sort of get things out into the public and their, reporters have every reporter has a different rule about what they will accept off the record, what they will accept only, with attribution, and just making sure that you're clear on the front end, what the rules are. So, obviously not, the best way to move a piece of opposition research is to just hand it to a reporter with no fingerprints and, just acting as if they, everything is public and they just found it themselves because they are an incredibly good reporter. That works a lot of the time. That's the best. But sometimes, a reporter will say, you're going to actually have to put your name on this, and that's fine, but just making sure that that's a piece of your sort of calculation as you're moving a piece, that'd be great. The third thing is timing. This is, I think, really important, especially because it's June. We're getting to the point where voters are starting to pay attention, but for instance, a lot of the times when you come across a good piece of opposition research, in last October, you're not going to want to move it last October because nobody's ever going to read about it. Sometimes it makes strategic sense to do that, but a lot of the times it makes sense to hold on to something until there's a good moment for it, unless you're really close to Election Day. Sometimes you hold it till the day before a debate, if that's, when you want your candidate to talk about it. Sometimes you hold it until the candidate that you're running against is having a public event, which would be another option. So just think about that as, is this the best time for this story to run or to be placed, with your overall campaign strategy. I just think that's, again, we all want to sort of get things out in the open as fast as possible, but sometimes it does make, sort of the most sense to just wait on it. The fourth thing is placement. Figuring out what outlet to go to. So, now anybody with a computer is a reporter. So sometimes, you have a piece of opposition research that, is a little bit shadier or something that is not totally legit. That it may be something that you want to pass along to a progressive blog or to something online, as opposed to, your sort of core beat reporters. And sometimes, you want to make sure that you actually get eyes on pieces of research like this. So sometimes you'll want to make sure that you give it to a TV station that will run something on TV as a way to get it on TV, or, especially if it's a video or something like that of a candidate as an exclusive or whatnot. The other thing to consider is, do you want to pop it into the Beltway first? Sometimes, if you get something written on Politico, your state reporters will then try to chase the DC reporter's story. And vice versa. So these are just things to think about as you move along with your piece of research. It's just sort of, what is the best venue for this, and what's going to give it the most bang for its buck. And then the last thing, which I think is actually the most important, is making sure that your opposition research ties to a theme. So, and for this one, I'll just use the 2012 election. The opposition research, a lot of which Lauren Dillon, who you heard from, found that was so potent about Mitt Romney was because it sort of played into a larger narrative about him. The narrative was, he is a rich guy who is out of touch with regular, everyday Americans and cares more about profits than he does about people. So stories about him laying off workers and stories about, sort of making lots of money, through maybe shady financial deals, totally played into that narrative. Now, if Lauren and her team had found out that one time, Mitt Romney stole a pencil from a student, that probably wouldn't be a really good opposition research story, because it's not interesting, one, and two, it doesn't play into the larger narrative. The narrative was never that Mitt Romney's a mean guy or mean-spirited. So I think that making sure that, you're not just peddling opposition research for fun, which it is fun, but making sure that, I think sometimes campaigns can get so hopped up in trying to push negative things about their candidate, the candidate they're running against, that they forget to make sure that it ties back to sort of your broader 2 or 3 themes of the campaign. So, and just with that, I would just say that, we have a lot of people here who have done this a lot. And so if you're ever unsure or ever, wondering if, or want to just kind of bounce some ideas off us with something you're trying to move, or if you're looking to move something in the DC, sort of in the DC echo chamber here, and you want our help, we're always happy to look at stuff. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jonay.
Awesome. Thank you, Lily, and thank you, Lauren Dillon and Lauren Smith. Just a quick reminder that if you have questions for either Lauren Smith, Lauren Dillon, or Lily Adams, you can type them in the questions box, or you can click the raise my hand icon. We did have one question here in our questions box about the different points that Lily hit on in terms of how to message your opposition research, and the previous presentation as well. We will provide a recap of all of the major points for those of you who tried to scribble down notes. We'll make sure that all the information is available to you. I'll take a moment as we wait for questions just to remind you all of our evaluation process. We have an evaluation that comes to your inbox directly after the webinar, and we want to get your feedback in terms of what you thought about the webinar for the day, or any additional questions you may have, or webinar ideas that you may have for the future. Use that, or please use that as your forum for giving us feedback on the training program and any other additional thoughts or comments that you may have. Seeing no additional questions in the questions box, I want to again thank today's presenters, Lauren Dillon and Lauren Smith from the DNC's research team, as well as Lily Adams, Deputy Communications Director here at the DNC, and thank all of you for joining today's webinar, and we will look to see you again next week. Thanks, everyone.